Hello, and welcome to our online learning segment on teaching with photographs. My name is Jessica Ellison, and I'm a teacher educator at K-12 Programs and Services at the Minnesota Historical Society. You can reach me at jessica.ellison@mnhs.org. At the end of this presentation, you will find a URL that links to a Google Doc that includes all of the links and activities featured in this segment, so no need to write down all the links that you see here right today. So let's get right into it. What are we going to talk about today? First, why teach with photographs? Second, where do we find them? And third, how do we use them in classrooms? So why use images? Well, they're excellent for visual learners, those kids who learn best when they see something that connects to the topic at hand. They're also helpful for younger students, ELL students, and struggling readers. This image of Rosa Parks is not the most common one we see when we're talking about the civil rights movement. This is her mugshot, and it's a great way to get a different perspective about a topic that is oftentimes featured in middle school and high school classrooms. It's a great visual of this time period. Images are also very emotional. They're photographs of people who have interesting stories, and we're living at a time where they were interacting with events and places that they have excellent emotions that you can pull out of photographs if you know the right questions to ask. So like this photograph you see is one of my favorites. It's Emmeline Pankhurst, who is a British suffragette, and she's being carried away by a policeman after protesting for the women's right to vote. And what a great story this photograph tells. Images are also an excellent companion to text, and they teach really critical consumer skills. So why do they need you as an educator? As a teacher, it is your responsibility to teach them not just to see the image, but to know what questions to ask to pull more of the story out of it. For example, the image that you see here on the screen is one that many students have probably seen before. It's a picture of migrant mother taken by Dorothea Lange in the 1930s during the Great Depression. So they might recognize it, and they see a woman and they see some children. But the kind of questions that you need to teach them to ask are, who is this woman? Why was this photograph taken? Where was it taken? What happened to this woman's family? They might not also notice that there's a third child in the photograph that the mother is cradling in her arms. And it's up to you as an educator to get students to see, but then also to ask the right questions so they can begin to analyze photography. Primary source analysis is a skill that really does need to be modeled and rehearsed on a regular basis so that students are comfortable with how to do it. Model how to read and decipher primary sources in your classroom starting day one of school. It's important to provide adequate background knowledge so they know the historical context. You can do things like lead off with warm-up activities or practice as a class. But whatever you do, just make sure that primary source analysis is a regular activity in your classroom. So where do we find them? Well, the resources on this list are a couple of different things. One, large repositories, and two, museums and historical societies. There's a lot of great places on the internet to get photographs, and this is just a place for you to start. First, the Library of Congress at loc.gov. They have a section called Prints and Photographs with thousands of photographs for you to use in your classroom, including this one, which is an image taken by Ansel Adams at Manzanar, Japanese American internment camp. There's a whole collection of Ansel Adams photographs. There's also a collection of Matthew Brady photographs from the Civil War. And Dorothea Lange's migrant mother and other images by Lange are included in an Office of War Information collection from the 30s and 40s. This is a really great place for you to start searching for historical photographs. The National Archives at archives.gov is the collecting arm of the federal government. And there's a couple of really great places to look for photographs at the National Archives. First is DocsTeach. And the nice thing about DocsTeach for educators is that they have taken their resources and divided them by era, starting in the colonial period in America up to the present. And so depending on what era you're teaching, you can go into each of those eras and pull out the resources that you need. It's organized really well for teachers. Presidential libraries are also linked to the National Archives. Every president from Herbert Hoover to George W. Bush has a presidential library. So you can go into their collections and their archives and see all kinds of great materials, including photographs from their lives and administrations. A couple of large repositories that you should definitely take a look at Digital Public Library of America is a consortium of libraries that came together and put all their resources in one place so it was easier for you to search. You can search by subject matter or by timeline, which is fantastic because you can search by century, you can search by decade, and you can search by year. The Minnesota Historical Society has a huge collection of Minnesota-related materials, including thousands of photographs. And the World Digital Library, if you're teaching any of the continents, is a great place for you to get your world history information. So you can search for photographs by continent, by institution, or by era. And then don't forget about museums. They're some of the best repositories for primary sources out there. The Smithsonian Institution has more than a dozen museums, and you can find on their collections over 1 million items, including thousands of photographs. And the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum is a good place to go to get materials to enhance your instruction about the Holocaust. Many students may have heard of Anne Frank, but to supplement with other photographs from the Holocaust will give students a much richer picture of this period in history. One last thing, a search engine tip for you. So if you're looking for information that you can't necessarily find in some of these other repositories that I showed you, here's a tip for doing a Google image search that will get you to some reliable sources. Include the words cite:/.gov after your search term to pull up images only from government sites. For example, if you put in Abraham Lincoln cite:/.gov into Google Images, it will only pull up images from places like the Library of Congress, the National Park Service, NEH. So you can make sure that the images that you're finding are going to be the ones that you can use reliably. All right, so let's jump into activities. First, you just need to get kids used to seeing images. Do things like start each class period with an image. Illustrate all your lectures. Post iconic pictures, such as the one you see here on the screen of Lyndon Johnson taking the oath of office after Kennedy's assassination with the distraught Jackie Kennedy at his side. Kids have seen these images, but if you post them around your room and get them used to seeing them in a classroom and knowing how to ask the right questions, they're going to pull a lot more information from them. You can also have students share images of their own lives, of their family members. It means something to them and their past, and it will start to make that emotional connection. You can also use literacy tactics with photographs. For example, you can use images as writing prompts or as exit tickets. And you can ask questions like, how does this image make you feel? What emotions do you see? How does this image connect to what we're learning? My favorite question is, what do you think happened just before or just after this was taken? Getting kids to really think about that fact that this photograph captures one moment in a whole string of moments in a historical event. And why was this image created? For example, here are a couple of photographs that you could use with writing prompts or exit tickets. The top image is the image of Emmett Till, who was a young teenager who lived in Chicago, who went down south to visit family members in the 1950s, where he was then lynched and then thrown in the river. The image on the bottom is of his mother at his funeral. She held an open casket funeral to show the world what had been done to her son. And if you look at the images that are taped up on the inside of the casket, the one in the middle is the same one that you see on the top of the screen. It's very emotional. And you can get kids to look at both of these pictures and begin to understand the story of Emmett Till and the civil rights movement. So a couple other activities that I want you to start thinking about to help analyze photographs. Have them analyzed for content by doing things like writing captions. Have them choose their own images to illustrate a subject that you're studying. Have students analyze current photographs, which is a great critical consumer skill. Have them compare images with multiple perspectives. So the two images that you see here on the screen do just that. They're both images of D-Day, but taken from two very different perspectives. The one on the top is the image of the soldiers climbing off the boat and going to the shore. And the other is a much more personal, up-close image of a soldier who looks like he's in just great agony. You can also have students write stories about images. What is this image saying about this particular time and place in history? Here's a couple of other basic activities that you can do with photographs. This one is called SOAP, and it's adapted from a really great blog called History Tech Blog that you should definitely check out for some good teaching ideas. And I like it because it's simple. SOAP is source, what is this? Occasion, why was it made? Audience, who was it made for? And purpose, what was it used for? And I like it because it requires students to access knowledge that they already have about the subject in order to answer these questions. This is one of my favorites for analyzing photographs. It's the thought bubble exercise. Have students create thought bubbles for the people, the animals, or even the buildings in a photograph. And you can do this either digitally or on paper. So what are the subjects thinking at the moment this photo was taken? So this photograph is of unemployed men in Minneapolis during the Great Depression. And the thought bubbles get at the idea that they're looking for jobs, they're looking for a future during this really difficult time. How am I going to feed my family? And maybe there's a job here for me today. It encourages students to really reflect on the topic at hand. Compare and contrast is another good activity. You can compare across time periods, you can compare multiple perspectives, or compare photographs that are created at the time and years after. So the photographs you see here on the screen are both taken of the same location, an area of Minneapolis that was once called Bohemian Flats and was home to many immigrants to the Twin Cities. And as you can see below, in the current day photograph, it's now a grassy field. And this requires students to consider different points of view. Another way to analyze photographs is to have kids create their own collections. So you can do this a couple of different ways. You can do teacher-directed or student-directed. If it's student-directed, then the students have to go out and find the sources themselves. But if it's teacher-directed, you have a little bit more control. Let's say you're studying World War II home front. As the teacher, you gather 20 or so photographs about World War II home front, and then you have the students pick the 3 or 4 photographs that they feel best represent that subject. So the 3 images you see on the screen do show different aspects of World War II home front, and you can come about it in different ways. This is nice because it requires students to make difficult choices and then explain those choices. So a last word. The URL that you see on the screen is the link to the Google Doc that includes all of the links and activities that we talked about here today. So feel free to write that down and access the Google Doc in your own time. Photographs are a really great place to start. They're great for a number of different reasons. The visual learners, the students who are struggling reading, and also because they tell emotional stories. But photographs also enhance learning and sharpen key skills that students need in school and then out in the real world. But ultimately, they make history real. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at jessica.ellison@mnhs.org. Thank you so much.